What's up, my beautiful people? This is your host, Anthony Mitchell, and you are here with us at the End Zone Club. And here at the End Zone Club, we have conversations that are designed to cause us to walk from just being in potential to actually fulfilling purpose. And today, before I even introduce my special guest, I would like to encourage you to like, share, rate, and subscribe to the content. Help us to continue our mission, which is to reach the four corners of the earth doing what we do. But with that said, I would like to ask my special guest, none other than Brother Walt Harris. How you doing today, sir?
Good morning, my brother, and good morning to you. It's great to be back on with you as usual. Love it.
Thank you. But I know it's been a minute, my brother, since you have been on this platform. When we first got ready to launch this podcast, you were one of the first friends of influence that jumped on and supported us in more ways than one. So I got to start off with asking, how have you been since your last appearance?
You know, during this season of my life, I cannot complain at all. Life has been good to me, as good as I've been treating it, and that's the main thing. You know, life will come, but how you handle situations, how you ponder on it, how you think about it, it's always going to be, indicative of where, your mindset is and how you're thinking on and perceiving situations. So for me, I'm trusting God, believing God. Life is life. You will get, hurdles, you will get challenges, but at the end of the day, when you know God is on your side, when you know He got your back, and you're able to then see a lot of the things that He is doing and has already done in your life. So I'm excited about this season of my life. I'm in a position to where I'm still trying to figure and wait to see exactly what the Lord has, but at the same time, I'm excited, really.
I knew straight out the gate you were going to have some nuggets you were going to drop on us. So before I get my shovel out and dig us too deeply in this conversation, we're a day removed from Christmas. How did you guys spend this Christmas?
We did this for the second year in a row. We didn't have Christmas at home. We had Christmas away. We went out and drove a few hours up north in Florida. So we just got on the resort and took some time and just enjoyed one another. It was a great experience last year, even better experience this year. Mother-in-law came in town and a little niece, and we had a great time yesterday. And it was cold here. Is it not usual? Being cold in Florida, but it's cold here, so you kind of got a little bit of that traditional Christmas feel with the cold. So we stayed in and just loved on each other, and it was a great feel.
All right, so pivoting real quickly, some of our first-time listeners may be unaware of this, but our guest is a former 13-year All-Pro defensive back who played at a high level in the NFL, namely with my San Francisco 49ers. But if I didn't get this from you, Walt, to share a story from your playing days, I might get ran off my own show. So if you don't mind, just reach into your bag of resources and share one of those stories that impacted you the most.
Oh man, I think when I think about once I left the Chicago Bears, was there for 6 years. Actually, you're always thinking that you're going to be there for the rest of your career, but not, and then you end up not renewing your contract, and then the Lord is moving you on, and so I end up going to play with the Indianapolis Colts, Peyton Manning. That was that quarterback that I put my SEC competitor with Tennessee, and I remember picking him off. As a cornerback, we always have to remember those moments, right? So I remember, intercepting a couple of his balls during college, and so end up having the opportunity to go and play with Dungy and play with Peyton Manning. And I remember it was something unique about Peyton. You know, you realize you watch things all over the television, and you wonder why he's playing at a high level. He knows so much. And so when I walked into the locker room, getting ready to just being introduced to everyone, getting my equipment and doing all that, Peyton Manning was one of the first guys that I remember seeing in that locker room. And he walked up to me, and it's almost as if he knew everything about me for more than I know about myself. And so I knew I was in a different place, really, because and it shared a lot to me about who Peyton was, because he studied the game, but he not only studied the game, but he understood and knew about all the players. And so that there was something that I remember walking into that locker room and seeing him there, and just he remembered all the college games and everything. I'm like, okay, I get it. I see why he plays at a high level. And then watching him out on the football field, practice field, and watching how he trains and all the small little things that many quarterbacks and many athletes would just, skip over. He was a detailed individual, from route running to making sure he throws the ball in the right place. And I hadn't seen that, coming from where I was with Chicago, although there were individuals that, had their focus on certain areas, but from a quarterback that played at that high level, you was able to see it live and right up front every practice, every day at practice. So that wasn't like a game piece, but that's something that I definitely wanted to share that popped up in my mind.
It's funny as you're sharing this story about Peyton. I guess I have a story that's kind of remotely related, but not directly. But back when I was in high school, I was blessed with an opportunity through what our youth pastor had an endeavor with the Boys and Girls Club, and there was a guest speaker in the house, and they extended us, and when I say us, I mean like the youth in our church, an opportunity to come out for maybe like 2 or 3 hours, serve tables, and to make, it was like $50 back in the 90s, right? That was a lot of money for a high schooler. So of course, all of us accepted it. Wasn't a hard night. It was a fundraising gala. So we're working tables, having a good time. And there was, towards the end of the event, there was a weird lull in that I had stopped working for a moment, and I'm by the stage near the guest speaker. Well, as I'm standing there, I'm waiting on my next set of instructions, and I just happen to look up on the stage, and he's standing there smiling at me. And I, just instinctively, out of respect, I smiled back. And the guy proceeds to say, "Hey, man, I just wanted to let you know I noticed you working all night. Like, man, you work really hard. Like, never lose that." And I smiled at him, just out of respect. And the guy said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And I started laughing. I was like, "No, sir. You gotta understand, I was a goofy kid." And he was like, "I'm Peyton's dad." I was like, "Peyton? Peyton who?" And they're like, "Peyton Manning." And I was like, "Who is Peyton Manning?" I was like, "Oh, Eli's big brother." Because ironically, Cooper was actually sitting there as well. And he was like, "Hey, man, do you want my autograph?" And again, because I didn't know who he was, I was kind of like, I guess. But I really got it for my dad. But the idea that this guy is who was Peyton's father and Eli and Cooper's dad, the kind of person he was, even as the star of the night, he still took the time to recognize the kids and the work we were putting in and just giving us that nugget. So Peyton growing up in that environment, of course, he is impacted, having seen it from a firsthand experience. But for the fans, people like myself that didn't get a chance to see it firsthand experience, I always wanted to hear this from the perspective of a player. But is the NFL a lot like the representation we've been given from like some of the shows, like TV shows like The Game or Ballers, or even some of the movies like Any Given Sunday? Is there any correlation?
Well, I haven't gotten into what's on Ballers. I haven't watched that show or whatever, but I think I kind of got the gist of it. But for me, coming into the league, just growing up from a small town, big family, the youngest of 13. And it was 13 of us total. And, when I got drafted, I had the perspective of really just wanting to make sure I did what I needed to do on the field, because I realized that this team had put a lot of confidence and trust in me, and I didn't want to be a letdown. And so, I obviously coming into the league, being young, you're trying to figure things out. You're trying to, you're trying to fit in at the same time. Um, you know, I, I won't use the word luck, but I was extremely blessed by once I got into the league my second year, that I was able to, isolate my lifestyle around individuals that was extremely positive, down to earth, and had a fix on life with their families, really. And so that kind of kept me away from a lot of maybe what's out there, what's being seen, and what's being talked about, especially now. I was kind of isolated, and I'm thankful for that today, to be quite honest, because it kept me humble. It kept me in a place of just keeping first things first, really. And I would have to say, had I not had that, I would have to say that I probably wouldn't have been in the league as long as I was, really. And I know that firsthand. So yeah.
Oh, hold up, Walt. Let me grab two shovels real quickly, because you've got me to the point in conversation where I want to give you a shovel, I get a shovel, and let's kind of get deep into this conversation now. But I like how you highlighted mentorship. Can we have an honest conversation about how important this was to your success?
Well, I will say this. I mentioned about the second year, but I didn't tell you about the first year, because the first year was one of those challenges, really, when when you come into the league. And I would say I ran into close encounters that I pondered back on my professional career by actually kind of getting and hanging with other individuals that lifestyle didn't reflect uh, what I am and stand for now. And that could be potentially what that baller perspective that you may be referring to. You're kind of like going out, and hanging out in clubs when you got to practice the next morning, waking up late, waking up late for meetings and things such as that. I think, I was on a very close verge of hitting that fallout point, really. And it was extremely one of those times where I see myself having the potential of getting caught up and being that player that just kind of fell off the map because of the lifestyle. And I'm so glad that I did have the mentorship of the individuals that eventually came into my life to help me, or to give me a different perspective on things. And so, yeah, as far as me looking at individuals or pondering on, I didn't really gauge into every people's lifestyle, or kind of like what happened. I didn't really pay much mind to those things, really, because the individuals that I kind of like was with, for the most part, were family oriented individuals, married guys, and just kind of just living life that had a slow pace to it.
To that point, I do want to say that some of us are only as strong as our support system. And there are some of us that allow our environment to shape who we are, which in turn affects how far we go in life. How many times have we mentored kids that seem to run into the same problems with every new opportunity that God blesses them with, right? What about those kids that have phenomenal talent, smart, engaging, charismatic, these things, but they keep running with class clowns, or some of these beautiful young women that have potential to go as far as they can think, but they keep ending up with the wrong guys. A lot of that thinking has been shaped by this narrative of what we're willing to stay true to. So for you, here's my question. Was mentorship something you asked God to give you? Or was this like God's grace kind of stepping in your situation and helping you to actually maximize this blessing he gave you?
Yeah, so I think it was gradual, but it was quick, and it's in the same way. Because as I was saying, my first year, I'm telling you, I went out, I just tried to do, I guess, what others did, just because I felt like this is what we do. Although I didn't grow up that way, although just that wasn't how I was raised from my parents, and that just wasn't the environment that I was used to. But when you go into different atmospheres, different environments, sometimes if you are not that individual that take the lead on things, you will become a follower. That's kind of leads to where I am today, really. But we'll get into that later. But um, I think for me, what happened with me was that the second year, I had a gentleman, and I think I spoke about this before on another platform. Like, God sent another individual, Tom Carter. That was another cornerback. He was a free agent, and that second year he came in. And they signed him to be the other corner. So I began over time, gradually throughout that year, because cornerbacks, defensive backs, we hung with each other. Say linemen hung with each other, quarterbacks hung with each other. That was kind of like the thing, and I know you probably understand as well from the military perspective. And so that's kind of like how it was. And so I think, looking back, God kind of knew that, because as I began to kind of become friends of Tom, and he invited me out to see his family. He invited me out to different Bible studies, things such as that. It was easier for me to say yes to, because I'm like, okay, this is an individual that we play the same position, and so let's see. And I do remember at the same time doing training camp, I I said, is this it? I'm thinking to myself, is this all what the league is all about? Is this, I'm not satisfied. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not, you know, is this it, Lord? And so right at that moment, I just felt like I was in a downward spiral in training camp. And he just came up, and we was in dorm type of atmosphere, Plattsville, Wisconsin, a place of nowhere. Maybe that had a lot to do with it too, because it was Plattsville, Wisconsin was was nothing there. But so yeah, he walked past my room to my room and just said, "Hey, we're having a little study here. If you invited, you want to come down." And I can remember it was the perfect moment, and it's like God kind of knew. And so I went there, went to it. It was a little different, but at the same time, over time, I was beginning to see this individual, who he stood for, and what type of lifestyle he had. I began to visit his family, and I'm like, okay. On one side, I see a lifestyle. I have a lifestyle with hanging out with individuals that's going out clubbing. They could do that. I just couldn't. And then I seen another individual that, hey, family. I said, have kids, settle, calm. And I had to make a decision. I said, this is what I actually want, really. And so that kind of became an influence in my life.
So since you brought up such a good point, I want to turn the corner just for a moment and have an honest question. And this is probably more for me than for you, but it's about perception. So as God is bringing you and evolving you and maturing you in some areas that now things that you used to do is no longer part of your lifestyle, I'm sure the perception of you changed to those around you. And that goes back for me growing up in the church, because we were kind of taught things differently as far as the way we engaged day by day. There was a target on our back. People branded us. They looked at us differently, right? It's like, man, church boy. On my Jamaican side, they called me the son of a preacher man. But to that point, when a lot of times when people don't understand the changes in you, they fight you. So my question is, Did you have to deal with any perception changes, and how did you handle that?
Actually, I didn't experience that at all, to be quite honest. I think just being, a first round draft pick on the team, obviously that was the first year, coming in, being one of the guys that, some players looked up to or saw as, just an influential individual, I guess, out on the field or in the locker room in my own way. And then once I made that transition over time, I didn't meet any type of um, challenges from other individuals. I was so on fire, and I was hungry for information. I was hungry for the knowledge. I was hungry for what I was learning through the word, through an individual, through a lifestyle, and I knew that that's what I was wanting. Because when there's something that I see and I like, I go at it hard. Once I figured I go at it hard, and so I dove deep into biblical things, scripture things, and I wanted to make sure that my lifestyle was reflective of that as well. So I was that guy that brought the Bible in the locker room, in the shower, everywhere I went. I was that individual. And so I didn't really get any kickback. I think I was more of an influence to others, really, during that time. So I didn't think too much about what people thought. It was just, this is just what it is, and I carried that thing with me everywhere I went, really. And I remember playing with the Indianapolis Colts, and had my Bible with me. And one of the players was like, "Hey, you take that everywhere you go, don't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I remember that quick conversations and that I had with that individual. But it showed me that people watching you, But I was just locked into my own zone.
What's funny is I'm a big 49er fan, and you played for the 49ers, but to hear you talk about your time in Indy and just the impact that it had on your life, one of the blaring points I get out of your time in Indy with Dungy is, first of all, the kind of person that Dungy was, where he was teaching men to be accountable. He was teaching men to be men of valor, men of strength, men that drew strength from the source, which is God, and not from the things around them. I think Warren Sapp gave one of the best analogies from some of the things in that field that he got. So if you can, just kind of, guys that are listening, go Google it and he'll tell you some important things. But as big of a person as Dungy was, what's also blaring to me is just how much of the seeds that Dungy was planting in you during that time in Indy. I see it growing now. I see it growing, like a lot of the platforms that you're doing with, like Men Matter, with your Huddle 27 camp, where you're pouring into these boys. Why is this important to you now? Is kind of where I'm getting at. Why? What made sense about what Dungy was teaching, and now why is this important that I see you replicating this in your own ministry?
It's interesting you said that about Tony Dungy, because even as I was just thinking about that, even now, I was young. I was so young, and it didn't take so much root in me at that time. Although I was trying to walk the walk, of faith and things like that, and it was interesting how God directed me to be on the team with Tony Dungy, and was able to kind of see him, see what he represented on the field and off the field. So that was a positive influence on me. I think, it really didn't trigger like it should have triggered. I wanted to trigger then. It triggered years later for me. Just my life and seeing some pitfalls that I had personally, even with my own life, and family, things such as that. And then I was able to kind of get back going and realize, man, this thing here, family, becoming a man, that our position is so important. And I think for me, as I look back, man, all of those experiences that I had with, the men that was in my life, from coaches, from players, it didn't take root then, or it may have taken root then, but I didn't see the fruits of it until now, to be quite honest. Let me say it that way. Those were seeds that were planted But eventually it took root because it took experience for me as well to be able to see that men are important. And without the man taking lead the way God has created us and called us to do and to be, and because that's his design, it creates havoc on society really, and it is hard for families because that's his structure. So as I think about this, it's so important that we as men be what we're called to be, do the things that we're called to do, because without us, and we look in our own communities today, and I know you know this. We look in our own communities today. You know, we don't see men are missing, whether we're in prison, whether guys are just kind of doing their things, and we leave all the work to the women, to the mothers, to do, to take hold of such a huge responsibility, and we're not present. And because of that, we see a lot of the challenges that we have in our communities, in our homes. And so that's my biggest fight today, is to help men to understand that we matter, to help men understand that our role that we play, our God role that we play, is so important in society today. Because we can complain about things, and we can look at it and see what's not right, but we have to do a self-check in our own lives to see exactly how am I living. What can I do in my own personal life to be an example for my influence, for my atmosphere that I'm in. So that's kind of that's where I am today. But just looking at the coaches and people like that, they sowed the seeds that I now see the results of today. So yeah.
10, 15 years from now, when some of the seeds you've planted through like your Huddle 27 football camp or your Men's Matter platform or a lot of the mentorship that you travel all over and you provide, what are some of the things you want some of the young men, especially that you've poured into, to say about the impact that you've had on their lives personally?
All I really want them to be able to just do and say is that Walt helped put me back on a better track. That he helped me to see myself as somebody that matters. Because I think a lot of times, with culture, with society, with everything that young people are facing today, there are so many distractions out there. And those distractions are only there to get you off course of what your God purpose is, what your purpose is as a young man, to be an impact in society today. And so if there's anything that I want individuals to see or to say, is that, he helped put me back on the right track, or gave me a perception or perspective that I never had before, that my household never gave me, or he showed me some things that I was able to understand to help me be a better young man. That would be one of the things that I would love to say, as well as help me to see God as who he is. That's really the most important thing for me when I think about it. So yeah, I would love to for that, nothing else, for that to be a legacy that I've carried.
I can definitely dig that, Walt. And as you're talking about putting people on the right course, I do have to know, for those that are listening into this and that are really intrigued by some of the things you're saying, how can they find you? What are some other ways they can engage and be a part of supporting some of the things that you were doing also with ministry?
Yeah, you can always you can go to my huddle27.com. That's the huddle that we are doing. We just initiated it earlier this year. You can go there and kind of see some things that we're doing. We're getting ready to kick off a couple of camps next year, to where we're working with young boys on the field and off the field. I'll be doing one in my hometown and another one back in um, Florida again. So I'm trying to hit two locations there. You can also find me on Facebook, the real Walt Harris, on Instagram, the same as that. I'm not a great a big technology. I think I was sharing that with you before on one of the posts, or whatever. So I got a lot of work to do, and I see I need to get with you to get some training because you got this podcast piece here, man. I'm loving it. But definitely, you can find me there as well as officialproplayers.org, which is my ultimate foundation that I have there. If you want to support, just see what we're doing.
So one of the unfortunate parts of having a podcast that's aired on the radio station is we only have 30 minutes to do our part. So we're just now getting to the part of the conversation where I feel like, man, we've got 30 more minutes we can cover, but I would not do that to you today, my good friend. But as always, every time I get a special guest on this platform, I always have to leave him with one final question. If you're ready, I'd like to proceed. But my question from me to you is, what is something you know now you wish you knew when you were younger?
I think for me, that's a good question, really. Because, I won't say I hate these questions because I know I think deep and just try to pull as much. If I knew then what I knew now, I think just the importance of just same thing I'm reiterating, the importance of what I do, the importance of what I do, taking that even more seriously because people are watching, and everything that we do out in society and home, everything that you do, it does really matter. And so just gravitating to that on a level to where I'm more careful because I'm sure just the things that I have done in my past has created a negative impact or a positive impact. And so that would be one of the things that I would just say I wish I knew then more what I know now.
So, hey, this is the End Zone Club. If you were hearing this podcast and you're enjoying today's conversation, I encourage you to like, share, rate, subscribe. Also, don't be afraid to hit the support button at the very top. By giving just a little bit of support, you help us to do what we do in the community and also to spread the word to the four corners of the world. And as always, until next time, be blessed. And this is another episode of the End Zone Club.